Hello friends, today we're going to be talking about how to get around short-term rental restrictions. The short-term rental market has seen an explosion in growth over the last decade. However, with that type of growth comes regulation and changing laws. So how do you navigate this murky water to participate in this segment of real estate that is amazing? Well, by the end of this video, I will dive into how to traverse these challenges like a pro, and I'll even share with you some of the alternative ideas so you're never caught in a pickle. One of the scariest things about owning a short-term rental is being caught in the crosshairs of new regulations surrounding short-term rentals. You have to remember that many municipalities and counties are still trying to wrap their head around all the challenges that come with the influx of short-term rentals. Understanding how to effectively get around short-term rental restrictions is more than just a necessity, it's a strategic advantage. And I'll dive into those questions by first going over what short-term restrictions are and reasons why they exist. Secondly, I'll cover the impact of those restrictions and how they can affect a short-term rental owner. And finally, I'll cover ways to navigate the restrictions so your short-term rental business can actually flourish. If you're ready, let's go. So what are short-term rental restrictions and why do they exist? Short-term rental restrictions are legal limitations or regulations imposed by local governments and municipalities, or sometimes by homeowners associations or other regulatory bodies that govern the use of residential properties. Now, these restrictions can vary greatly from one location to another and can also include a wide range of rules, from complete bans to specific requirements for running and operating a short-term rental business. So let's talk about zoning laws in residential neighborhoods. Many cities have zoning laws that are designated to allow short-term rentals in certain places but not in others. And they do this to maintain the character and the safety of those neighborhoods. Short-term rentals, especially when operated in high volume, can conflict with these rules and these neighborhoods, and that leads to more restrictions. Let's talk about HOA and community agreements. We've all seen the memes and the funny things about HOAs, but a lot of times they're put in place for our good, but they do have their own set of rules and regulations, and a lot of those can restrict short-term rentals. And one thing that they really want to do is protect that neighborhood and the permanent residents there. I mean, if we're honest about ourselves, not all neighborhoods love short-term rentals, but some of these rules are to reduce noise and protect its permanent residents. The other challenge short-term rentals can have is the following. It can potentially impact local housing market and affordable housing. In some areas, the rise of short-term and vacation rentals have been linked to the decrease in available long-term residences that permanent residents seek, and sometimes price the local residents out of buying a home in that area. If you look at the town of Blue Ridge, I just saw recently that AirDNA said the average home price in Blue Ridge is $759,000. Now, I do understand that includes like the mansions that are on the lake or way up high in the hills, and so that's going to skew some of the data. But if somebody's working in the tourism industry, it's going to be hard to find a permanent home to live in when short-term rentals have really ran the prices up in that area. So that's one of the things that short-term rental restrictions might do to protect the housing market for its residents. And obviously, you have the hotel industry that looks at this like a competition. They're seeing all these short-term rentals and it's decreasing their revenue. And these are big businesses. These hotel chains are massive. So sometimes they'll have lobbying groups that'll try to enforce governments to make rules and regulations surrounding short-term rentals. And obviously the last one is infrastructure pressure. Now, one I'm intimately familiar with is we own a couple of short-term rentals close to Yellowstone and Island Park. And one thing that's happened, we've seen a boom of short-term rentals up there. But the thing that's been strange, or the challenging thing that's causing the infrastructure, is you have a lot of 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 3-bath homes or cabins that are saying that they can sleep 15 to 20 people. Now, how do you do that with only 2 beds and 2 baths? What they do is they have a loft and they stack that loft with tons of beds, bunk beds, so people can stay there. But the infrastructure of the sewer and septic systems is not built to have 15 to 20 people using the septic system on a regular basis, and it's caused a lot of infrastructure challenges to the point that Island Park has been having talks in their county meetings, city meetings about reducing how many people can stay at a short-term rental based on how many rooms are available. They're talking about 3 people per room is the max. So that 2-bedroom, 2-bath that sleeps 15 or 20 can now only sleep 6. Now that hasn't passed yet, but that's what they're proposing, but they're receiving a lot of pushback from the short-term rental owners that bought this home with the idea that they were going to receive revenue based off of 15 people staying there rather than 6. And as you can imagine, being caught in those crosshairs is a challenge. Now we're fortunate, we have a 7-bedroom and an 8-bedroom, so the amount of people that can stay in ours, it doesn't affect us. But I do understand why the city and county is doing what they're doing, because it's having an effect on their septic systems and sewers and also the groundwater. But I also see the side of the short-term rental owners because they bought the home expecting for it to pay for all the bills, the mortgage, and to grow and to appreciate over time. So what impact do these restrictions have on short-term rental owners? We could probably come up with quite a few, but I'm going to focus on these 3. 1, there's financial implications. Restrictions can limit rental income. As I talked about in that Island Park example, when you're renting out and you're getting maybe, say, $800 to $1,000 a night because you can fit that many guests, but understanding that now you can only have 6 guests, you might get $300-$400. That's a huge, significant financial implication because of some short-term rental restrictions. The second one is operational implications. Complying with local HOA regulations can add time, energy, and money to your operation. Needing short-term rental, business licenses, maybe neighborhood licenses, municipality licenses can add to the complexity of operating your short-term rental. The third thing is legal consideration. Owners must be compliant on all the legalities to avoid any fines or legal disputes. As rules and regulations change, it's important to have a voice. That's why I see so many of these short-term rental operators getting involved in government so they do have a voice, or showing up to the county meetings or city meetings, because rules and regulations are taking place, and a lot of times that's been dominated by permanent residents, and many times permanent residents do not want to see short-term rentals in their neighborhood. Even though everything in the HOA, the neighborhood, allows for it to happen, that's just their preference. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, and if you're operating under all the rules and legalities, you can do that. You can have a short-term rental, but being a part of the local government or participating in those meetings is vitally important so you understand the legalities and your voice can be heard. So how do you get around these short-term rental regulations so you can avoid any implications that might slow down your business or potentially hurt you? First off, just remember, as a short-term rental owner, you are running a business. You need to act like a business, perform like a business. How you approach situations, the words you use, they all have an impact on treating you like a business. And it gets you started out on the right foot. If people view you as a business, they are more apt to treat you as a business or in a better way than just as an individual, or maybe an annoying neighbor or somebody who doesn't even live in their community who's trying to get something done. But by acting like a business, being a business, you're going to get more respect and you're going to see better results with your short-term rental. You also need to make sure that you do your due diligence to find the areas that have strong roots in tourism and short-term rentals. I actually just saw something on Facebook the other day where a gentleman said, hey, I'm in Ouray, Colorado, and I own a triplex, and I use it as a short-term rental, but they've just come out with regulation that limits this. What can I do? And my heart just kind of sank for that individual because they bought that property as a short-term rental to make money, and it looks like things in Ouray, Colorado, and other parts of Colorado are becoming more restrictive on short-term rentals, and this person was caught in the crosshairs. So you need to do your due diligence to make sure that wherever you're buying has roots in tourism and short-term rentals. Another thing that I highly recommend is become friends with the neighbors. We did this in the property we bought in Blue Ridge, Georgia. So when we bought in Blue Ridge, Georgia, it was not a short-term rental. We converted it to a short-term rental. First thing I did is we're at the end of a street. There's one house that is next to us that is actually at the very end of the street, but we're the second home at the end of the street. I went and met my neighbor, introduced myself. I saw neighbors walking down the street. I made it a point to introduce myself, let them know that I wanted this to be successful. I didn't want to disturb them, and they could reach out to me anytime if there was any problems. That made a world of difference for the people there because they were permanent residents or a second home where they traveled from Atlanta. Matter of fact, the lady next door to us has now utilized our home probably 2 or 3 times every single year to stay at when she brings family in to visit her. And so having good neighborhood relations is really important. Another thing to do is create alliances. Be on those Facebook pages. So for example, I'm part of one up close to Yellowstone that's short-term rentals for Island Park. And this is where people are creating alliances to help get their voice heard on certain regulations and on local government. And if all else fails, there's some things you can do. Consider alternative uses of your short-term rental. It could potentially be a midterm rental if you're in an area or a city where you have traveling nurses or corporate people traveling traveling. Typically, this is more in a metropolitan area where it's close to a hospital, but converting it to a midterm rental could be a good option. Or you could look at corporate retreats, right? If you're in an awesome area and somebody wanted to get away and have a corporate retreat, that's another option. So looking at other options could potentially help you get around short-term restrictions. Now, short-term restrictions can be tricky, but this is what I've seen to be helpful and useful. I'd be interested in your feedback. What have you seen? Go ahead and comment below, leave some feedback. And as always, I've got a free gift for you. It's aaron'sfreetraining.com. It is a short-term rental calculator where you put all the input in and it spits out to you whether it's a good deal or not. I've used it for all of my short-term rentals that I bought and all the ones I'm currently looking at. Once again, thanks for stopping by. Have an amazing day.